What's up, everybody? This is Hall of Fame wide receiver Terrell Owens here, a.k.a. T.O. Get your popcorn ready. Do a favor. Leave my guy Conor a 5-star rating after the show. Listen to it. Give him some feedback. And also, if you want to listen to my podcast as well, check it out. Subscribe, share. You don't need to leave a 5-star rating. We're 5-star. I'm 5-star all the time. My podcast is called Get Your Popcorn Ready with T.O. and Hatch. Again, check out both of those podcasts. And hey, check it out, listen, and subscribe.
All right, thanks for tuning in to Eagles Brawl of the Brawl Network. However you're listening, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. We greatly appreciate it. Johnny Page and myself here, Conor Myles, we're breaking down the rest of our top 20 players who we think is going to have the most impact on the Eagles' 2020 success. We did parts 1 to 10. So far, we're recording literally this episode the day after. It's hard to get time to, and of course, Johnny and I were like amped up for yesterday's episode. We had to go ahead and get the rest done right away. But this is going to air not this upcoming Monday the 6th, but the July 13th. So again, same giveaway. You guys tell us who you think has the better 11 to 20 list, and tell us exactly why, and we will pick the best reason, and you will win a free Eagles jersey because of it. So. Easy giveaway. You just have to listen to us talk. If that's so hard to do, I don't know why you even play this podcast in the first place. So you could win an Eagles jersey out of it. I just need a thought-out answer, one that him and I can actually debate about, because I think we should do a recap episode of this, Johnny. I think after we get all of the interactions because maybe somebody out there listens to this episode and thinks, you know what, I'm going to make my top 20 list. I'm going to show those guys, and I want to see what they think. I'm down for that. So, again, we love interaction. This is what we're doing. This is why we love the giveaways at Eagles Brawl. Again, thanks for everybody's interaction. But, Johnny, I'm going to have you start off with your number 11 because I'm interested to hear, because I think mine will surprise you. Because it's not – I will just give a hint of what my 11 player is, and I'll let you go. It's not a player that was on the team last year.
All right, interesting. Just in case for anyone who hasn't listened as well for some reason, if you haven't listened to 1 to 10, please go and listen to that first because it will make more sense. I'm not going to run through all of 1 to 10 now, but brief bit of background if you haven't listened yet. For some reason, this is the first time. Me and Conor don't know each other's lists. That's the point of this. We're not ranking the top 20 players. We're ranking the 20 players that could have the biggest impact on the team this year, so the 20 most important players. And in our top 10, we will tweet out the full list when it's done. Actually, we need to tweet out our 1 to 10. As well. But the only difference me and Conor had in terms of players was I had Dallas Goedert and he had Rodney McLeod. They were the only difference in terms of players, but the order was a bit different. We saved this one till the second episode because we think it's going to be a bit more interesting, actually. I think, Conor, we've got the same first player. Seeing as you mentioned he's not here last time, because my number 11 is Javon Hargrave. So if you got the same person?
Yes.
Well, there you go. So we haven't seen each other's list. I'm a little bit surprised we had it the same. So he was pretty near cracking the top 10 for me. And for a player that was not here last year, I think it sums up he's going to be an pretty important signing. So Javon Hargrave, you can expand on it. It's a pretty easy one for me, really. I think despite the addition of Darius Slay, especially with the linebacking core this team has got, their defensive line is going to have to carry the team to an extent. I think especially actually in run defense. I think underrated is the fact that the Eagles linebackers might be quite bad potentially in run defense this year. So I think the defensive line is going to have to carry them a little bit. They're also losing Malcolm Jenkins, who's a very good safety in the box in terms of run fits, and he's a very, very consistent tackler. So I think with Malik Jackson last year obviously barely playing, the defensive line struggled a little bit. I think Cox got double teamed too often. I think he struggled a little bit, Cox, to have his best year. I don't think the defensive ends are going to be unbelievably good this year. I mean, we really like Graham. We both had him higher. We both think Barnett's average. So I think they're going to need some good production from Hargrave. So I think if the Eagles' defensive line is going to be really, really good this year, I think Hargrave's going to have to play very well. And the good news is he's a very, very good player. However, you never know how a player's going to transition scheme fit wise. But I'm excited about Hargrave. I think he will have a big role this year. And I think he's going to need to have a big role for this Eagles defensive line to be very, very good.
I'm not worried about the scheme fit at all because this is the natural defense for his skill set. He's a force on the interior as a pass rusher. He commands double teams, which is exactly what at the age that Fletcher Cox is at after the workload you given him, especially last year. I think last year his box score doesn't speak to how much work he put in on the field last year. You need a player of Javon Hargrave's impact. And going back to college, the only reason why he was drafted so low was because of his size. Again, it was 4 years ago, but NFL teams do not believe that heavily in those size defensive tackles making an impact on the game. But Javon Hargrave's motor is incredible. You get him in a position where you line him next to Fletcher Cox, which if you take Javon Hargrave and you put him on the Dallas Cowboys, you put him on the New York Giants, you put him I won't say the Washington Redskins. They actually have some good interior defensive players. But if you put him on any of those teams, he's their best defensive tackle going into the season. To put that next to Fletcher Cox is incredible. Look, Fletcher Cox is aging. You're getting to him at the point where you're putting way too much on his plate. You need a guy like Javon Hargrave to alleviate some of that pressure, to put Cox in the best position to be the player that I believe he is by having him number 2 on this list. The revolving door has to end here at Javon Hargrave. You put $39 million into him. I think Jonny hit it best. He's great against the run, great against the pass, but his impact is also on the run, but it's also in pass rush because Derek Barnett has better situations now. If Javon Hargrave is playing to the extent that we believe he can, the offensive tackle is going to have to chip him to help the interior guard out. So there you have Derek Barnett, who's going to have great position on the offensive tackle when he struggles with bull rushing right off the bat as is. So that impacts Derek Barnett. It impacts Fletcher Cox to bring out the best in him. I agree with you. This defensive line, because his defensive end position is so up in the air and unproven behind Brandon Graham, they need the interior, him, Malik Jackson, Hassan Ridgeway, and Fletcher Cox to step up and be the best pass rushing unit on that defensive line. Like I said, Darius Slay is very high on my list for his role. Javon Hargrave was the best offseason addition. You're getting him in his prime, in a system that fits him incredibly well. He played in a system where he was the nose tackle, where you would look at his size, anybody scouting it, watching him off the tape at the Senior Bowl, would never envision him thriving as a nose tackle in a 3-4 base defense, and he did it exceedingly well. He gave them honestly, Bud Dupree, Devin Bush, TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt over there, all great players, but I guarantee you ask them how much the impact Javon Hargrave brought to them, and they would rave about that guy's play. Malik Jackson getting older, coming off the injury. I don't think this pandemic helps him out with anything with reps either. You can't count on him as that much either. And again, Hassan Ridgeway also coming off injury. So if those guys were fully healthy, I think Javon Hargrave would be lower on my list, but they're not. And you need that defensive tackle position. You need that guy to be a stalemate next to Cox. You can't keep throwing, like we said yesterday, you can't be throwing out these Albert Rushes, these Huggins, these guys that you barely even know, and expect Fletcher Cox to play at his top level anymore. You exactly why you went out in free agency. You missed out on Byron Jones, and you turned around and you got Javon Hargrave, the top money you got Darius Slay at the same time. I love these additions, but I love Javon Hargrave the most because of what you said. Helps in the run when their linebacking core is god-awful, not going to be good this year. They need the defensive line to stop the run as they're accustomed to. And number 2, he puts Derek Barnett, Fletcher Cox in way better positions than they were last year. So, again, love the Javon Hargrave addition. His impact, you can't – honestly, I don't see a list where you can't have him in this list in the least top 15 because of the impact he brings.
Yeah, I'd agree. Top 15. I think you could make an argument with even slightly lower. I think if anything, I think he could have cracked our top 10.
He could have cracked the top 10.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put him at 11, you clearly thought about him at 10. So
yes,
yeah,
I did.
you could argue with it.
Last thing, because I'm pretty sure that's about as good of an explanation you'll ever get. So well done. That is there's some serious analysis there. And the last thing I will mention,
Dude,
and you already mentioned
I'm just so passionate about it that
I can tell.
Fletcher Cox, because you can argue Aaron Donald gets asked to do the most in his defense. I would say maybe, but I think earlier in the earlier years, not this past season, but the years prior, the Rams had the edge rushers to complement Donald commanding all the attention. This last year, and I wouldn't want to say the year prior because Tim Jernigan was a solid starter before the injury, but this past year, and again, it's not like the Eagles didn't try. They didn't expect Willie Jackson to go down week 1, but they're at the position where you cannot ask Fletcher Cox to do as much as you did last year. He, as great as he is, you can't expect a player aging in this specific system, which is pretty much the Chip Kelly offense of defensive line, to play at the level that you asked him to last year with guys that shouldn't be on the field next to him. So that's why I just think you just cannot underrate the Javon Hargrave addition because he makes Fletcher Cox, the elite player that he is, so much better, and that changes the entire outlook of the defense just from that role alone.
Yeah. Right. Give me a number 12 before this turns into the Javon Hargrave podcast.
Nicole Roby-Coleman.
Wow, you're all right. He's in my top 20, but you're higher. You still haven't said Goddard. I'm interested to know where Goddard comes. He was in my top 10. I
put Goddard low because I mean, he made my top 20, like I said, but like you said, the replacement thing that weighed heavily on my head. If Goddard goes down, Ertz and Josh Perkins don't miss a beat for me. I think Josh Perkins is better than most people give him credit for. So that's why I had to take that in my head. But Goddard's on here. Don't worry.
Right, so you had Roby Coleman. I did have the guy that you had in the top 10, so I've now had all of yours. I had Rodney McLeod, and I said I wasn't going to talk about Rodney McLeod much because I think, to be honest, we covered him a lot in the last episode. So why don't you...
Oh, dude, he owes me a sponsorship.
Yeah, you went on about McLeod for a while. So although I was sort of playing the opposite role, I still have him 12. So I'm nowhere near as low as him as maybe on the podcast sometimes. That's the thing, isn't it? Whenever you have two different opinions, I take the negative opinion, yet I have him 12. So I'm still pretty high on McLeod this year, but maybe just not as high as you. But seeing as we discussed McLeod for loads already, make your case for Roby Coleman being that high.
All I want to say is when I win this contest, you owe me Rodney McLeod IPA. But I don't think – I mean, look, I like to go back and watch what made teams successful. And I do that with the Eagles because obviously that's our favorite team. That 2017 team, I always want to look at that defense and just be like, why did that defense with the guys that they had on it hit their stride? Because honestly, nobody thought much of Chris Long when they signed him. He was a reserve defensive end, did well with the Patriots, but his numbers weren't crazy. And then he was kind of like towards the end of the career with the Rams where he wasn't producing that much. So nobody thought that was a crazy signing at the time because the impact that he brought was immenseful after, obviously. But at the time, it wasn't like, whoa, all right, they got Chris Long. Like that doesn't put them in a Super Bowl contending team. That defense had Jalen Mills and Ronald Darby starting on the outside. They didn't have Hugh James rushing the passer because I don't think Brandon Graham he was thought of well, but not as much as he was now since then. What made that team so successful was how dominant they were in the nickel. That slot, Patrick Robinson played. He was in 2017. He was the best slot corner in the NFL. Like, definitely. That's not an understatement. He was the best slot corner in the NFL. It changed the whole dynamic of what the Eagles could do on defense. It changed the whole dynamic because the NFL, like we've alluded to in other episodes, some teams are putting their best wide receiver in the slot. Some teams are have a Pacific slot wide receiver that's so elusive that most slot corners can't even handle him. So Patrick Robinson played such at a high level that I think that his impact propelled that defense and made it I think he had the third highest impact on that defense that year, in my opinion. Fletcher Cox, probably number one. Number two, probably Jenkins. I don't know if you would say anybody else, maybe Graham. But number three, I would say Patrick Robinson.
Yeah, maybe Jenkins and Graham and then Robinson, in my opinion.
So anyways, then he's your third or fourth no matter what. So that's a huge thing to say right there, right off the bat. Nicole Roby-Coleman, I think, is a better nickel corner than Patrick Robinson. And to have him this high, you might think like, dude, he's a free. I mean, they just got him. They didn't really commit to him that well. They've had all these nickel corners on their team anyways. Maddox might be the best suited there. They have LeBlanc, who's played well when he comes on the field. Nicole Roby-Coleman already knows Jim Schwartz's defense. So when Jim Schwartz likes a guy, we already know how high he is on him. Nicole Roby-Coleman won that slot corner job as soon as he put his pen to paper and signed that contract. He's a great talent at nickel corner. And with the unclear picture at cornerback too, Roby-Coleman's down to play, and if Slay plays to the expectations that we gave on the previous episode on our rankings, the Eagles actually have a formidable pass defense for once, and it changes the dynamic of what they can do at the pass rush. So that's why I think Nicole Roby-Coleman's impact, you have to put him in the top 20 on this list.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to change my list because I've made my list, but I think
you could put him anywhere, honestly.
Yeah,
you could put
I think you've convinced
anywhere
me.
As long as he makes the top 20. Top 20. He has to make the top 20.
So I won't tell you where he is now because I won't spoil it. But what I'll say is, if I was probably starting this from scratch, I reckon I'd bump him up 2 or 3. I reckon you convinced me. I'll tell you where he is in a bit when we get to him. Yeah, I think you've made a really, really good point there. The other thing I'd mention, actually, to be honest, I pretty much had everything you said in my description. I barely think there's anything else. I think the only thing I would mention is there is a chance, and I'm quite optimistic because I like Maddox, but there is a chance, and we mentioned this yesterday a lot, that the Eagles cornerback 2 gets destroyed this year. If Maddox isn't good, I don't think Sidney Jones is particularly good. I don't think Razzle Douglas is any good at all. If that does happen, especially if Maddox goes down and they're sort of big time struggling, you're going to have to lock Slay down. You're going to have to lock Roby-Coleman down. You're going to have to give a lot of help to that second cornerback. So you don't want to have to sort of be providing safety help to Roby-Coleman. So I think that's another reason why he's an important player, because if you've got a good cornerback 1 and you've got a good nickel corner, you can easily cover your second corner position. It's not as valuable. It's not as important. So I think he has a really, really big role to play. But yeah, nothing else to add on everything you said, to be honest, because I just want
to add to that because I listened to episode 1 just to make sure all the audio was good and everything. By the way, I love this new Yeti X mic from Blue that I got. I think my audio sounds a little bit better. I know I'm giving you the old mic, the Yeti original, but it's still a good mic. Don't worry. It's still a good mic. But yeah, because it's funny because I don't think anybody really knows this. I told a few people, but you haven't used a microphone since we've done this podcast, and your audio is still great thanks to this podcast. But Johnny's always used just headphones.
Yeah, literally standard headphones.
Literally, he's always used just headphones. It's the funniest thing. 'Cause, I mean, I hear you just fine, and everybody else does, but I'm finally getting Johnny a microphone. We're sending it out to him, so his audio will even be a little bit better. But I just want to say one thing to end this, and then we'll go on to number 13, because you said your number 12 was McLeod already, and we don't need to touch on that. But I personally, I go, when I make my opinions on here, I usually go with what I think the Eagles will do. Me personally, I want Sidney Jones to be cornerback too. I think he's a better corner than Maddox. I think he has all the potential in the world. He just is inconsistent and injury prone. Now, I don't think that's what Jim Schwartz wants. I think he loves Maddox and wants Maddox to start. That's why I always think my gut's telling me Maddox would start. But Sidney Jones has the most potential to be the second best outside corner on this team. I tend to lean away from where you're going with that, because I don't think you can put any Roby-Coleman anywhere else than the nickel spot. I don't think you can line him up on the outside unless he's playing the slot wide receiver that the team moved out the outside. It's just me. I don't know. Obviously there's going to be some snaps where Roby-Coleman's either playing the tight end or the X wide receiver or something like that. You know what I mean? But I don't think you can regularly put him on the outside and then hope like Maddox plays better at the slot or LeBlanc has to come in and play the slot. I don't think would work that easily. I think Sidney Jones gives you a better chance there, especially going into next season when you have Darius Slay and Nicole Roby-Coleman. Sidney Jones is probably going to play the third best wide receiver, line up against the team's third best wide receiver. So he's having the best situation he's ever had in his career, probably at the healthiest he's ever been at in his career.
Yeah,
so
I think that's fair. And for what it's worth as well, I don't have Maddox or Jones on this list because I'm not confident.
Neither do I. No, I don't have them.
That sums it up really, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, let's continue this list. It's not the cornerback 2 debate. Let's continue the list. So I have number 13. This might surprise you a little bit because I hated putting him this high, but given the defensive end position this year, you need so many guys to step up, and I have Derek Barnett here at number 13. As I previously mentioned, he's in line for a breakout year. He's playing for a new contract as well, so I think that factors into it. Healthy. He looks like he's so lean now. I think he lost a decent amount of weight. I'm hoping that he added all that strength to handle bull rushes because you and I keep killing him for it. I mean, I even got offered money to stop talking about Derek Barnett on this podcast, and yet he's making my top 20. So, especially at number 13, he's making my top 15. So, but with Hargrave added, Barnett has way more opportunities to win on outside and inside leverage on his offensive tackles that he lines up against. Barnett excels at rushing the passer and facing that type of protection. So, he's in line for potentially a 10-sack season, which isn't that crazy considering he had 6.5 last year in a worse situation. But he's playing for a contract, trained with Jim Washburn this offseason, which I think is going to help way more than anyone expects. Because, again, Jim Washburn is pretty much the architect of this wide nine that Jim Schwartz runs. And then I said that he might have the 10 sacks because he's playing next to Hargrave. So, contract, situation, health. All leads to Derek Barnett, and they need him to be this because, again, Vinny Curry, as of right now, is not back on this roster. Jernard Avery, not proven. Josh Sweat looked nice last year. You hope he needed him to make some kind of leap next year, though, and not play. He needs to be better than what he was, or else then he's still the fourth defensive end on this team. Sharif Miller, not ready, I don't believe. I didn't really see it with him anyways. Joe Ostman, they love him, but that's not someone you can go into next season and hope that he's your third or fourth defensive end. So if the roster stays how it is right now, Derek Barnett's impact, you need him to be in the top 15 of these top 20 players then.
Yeah, I think that's really true. Barnett's a really interesting one. I haven't told you my 13 yet, but I will tell you that Barnett is 14. So for all the hate we occasionally get for being low on Barnett, you have him 13, I have him 14. So I think, again, I
never even think that we're that harsh on him.
No, I don't either. I think we say he's an average player.
I mean, honestly, he's right there on my wall. That's the fumble recovery. It's not that I don't like Barnett. I'm just being honest. Like, you can't be an NFL fan and say every starter on my team is great. Like, that's not how it works. You probably have 5 great starters on your team, max. Like, you're going to have these average players that still perform. And again, I think if Barnett has the season that we're envisioning him to have, now you're going to have people saying, like, we have the 2 best defensive end in the NFC East or stuff like that. I'm like, no, it's a situation. Barnett's an average pass rusher. If you want to call Barnett this great player, he needs to win on the bull rushes. He needs to win on every down. You can't take him off the field if he's this player that you think he is. But yet the Eagles still have to because he's not a consistent pass rusher. So, again, like I said, situation, everything that the depth behind defensive end, you need Derek Barnett to have a top 15 impact on this team this year to be successful, given what the defensive end room looks right now. But let's hear your 13, though.
Just really quickly, last thing on Barnett, he wouldn't be 14 if they signed Vinny Curry back. So
he'd be way down.
Yeah, we'll talk about this.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. My list would look a little bit different if.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's you're going to have a podcast or soon. The next one will be about cap space. We won't touch too much on it today, but I think the Eagles cap is not great. So I think I've been saying all off season, bring back JP, bring back Vinny Curry. I'm now starting to wonder for the first time if they do. Because of that, my list is a little bit different. My list would definitely shake around a bit if Peters and Curry were back. My 13, you keep beating me to players. You keep justifying them, but I've got one ahead of you this time. So I'm interested to know where you have him, because I think you were lower on him than me because you mentioned it before. I think you like him now. I have Isaac Seumalo. Higher than maybe people might expect. I have him at 13. Part of this is bias. I actually liked Seumalo a lot when he came out. I don't often write offensive line film room pieces because they take me forever, because I always end up having to watch every snap more closely because it's not a position that I would say I'm particularly well skilled in, so I have to spend a lot of time breaking it down. In fact, the only 2 I think I've ever done seriously were Brandon Brooks, and I nailed that, by the way. I said he was a star. I mean, to be fair, everyone did. But I liked Seumalo a lot as well, and actually I think what I said is pretty much the player he's become. That film review was years old, so most people probably have never even seen it. But yeah, I really like Seumalo. I think every single year he's got better. I think he struggled with size. I think it's not out the question he even plays centre in the future if Kelsey goes, but that's a whole other discussion. He is consistently improved to the point where He is very athletic. So when they run their sort of sweeps, when they run their sort of power, he is quite able to get across the line of scrimmage. He's able to move well in the screen game, and he's improved his anchor. So he doesn't get ball rushes consistently anymore. You don't see him on his bum very often. He's pretty good in pass protection now. I think he's improved a significant amount, actually. And I think, yes, he's played next to two greats in JP and Kelsey. But JP obviously hasn't been the same last couple of years. He's missed quite a lot of time, and actually he's had to deal with a bit of a revolving door at left tackle. He's played with Big V, he's played with Dillard, he's played with JP.
Sayamalu has boosted Jason Peters' play.
Yeah, it's hard as well. It's hard playing with a different left tackle all the time because a lot of offensive linemen dealing with stunts and stuff. So Sayamalu is obviously a pretty smart guy because he deals with different players coming in. I'm starting to get the opinion now, and this is a whole other discussion about cap space, and we might be totally wrong here, but I'm starting to think maybe that Dillard is going to play. I would probably bring back JP, and I've said that before. I'd also bring back Curry, but I get it. I'm not Harry Roseman. I'm not in charge of the cap. And at the moment, we're commenting on where the team is now. If JP's not there, Sayamalu is going to have a good year because Dillard is going to need help. I think they're going to have to shift protection to the left a bit. I don't think, whatever your opinion of Dillard, I doubt he comes in and blows it away from day one at left tackle, which means Sayamalu might have to coach him up this year. I think there'll be stuff off the ball we don't see. I think dealing with stunts. I also think there'll be times when Dillard ends up on his backside because he's been ball rushed, and you might see Sayamalu have to help out. You might see him in certain situations have to double team more. I think you're just going to have to see Sayamalu in general sort of helping out Dillard. Even in things like the screen game, you might see Dillard maybe miss a block and Sayamalu has to recover. So I think it's going to be quite a big year for Sayamalu. I think previously he's just been a good starter, and I think this year if the offensive line is going to be better, or the run game is going to be better as well, he might have to be a little bit better than he's been recently, just because this is clearly the weakest offensive line going into the season the Eagles have had in quite a while. To be fair, there are pretty much two unknowns, and there's only five players. So yes, there's two excellent all-pros there in Kelsey and Johnson. There's two unknowns in Dillard and Pryor we see at the moment. So I think Sayamalu is going to have a big season, actually. I think he's going to play well. I think he's going to surprise people with how he does. And the Eagles better hope he's good. Because if Sayamalu has a sort of regresses and has a down year because he was only playing well being next to JP and Kelsey, then this offensive line suddenly is pretty leaky. So I've got Sayamalu up there at 13. As I mentioned, I've got Barnett at 14. I've got Sayamalu higher than people might think. Maybe not a sexy pick. There's definitely some players that stand out more, but I'm a believer in Sayamalu's talent, and I think he's going to have a good year this year.
I put Sayamalu too low now. It
always happens afterwards.
Realizing that I put Dillard above him.
Wow.
I don't want to give it away because Dillard is literally my next player.
The good news is I'm getting some beers then because you screwed it.
Because you did convince me that. So look, here's the reason why I think I put Sayamalu lower, and I think I was wrong for it because a lot of people talk like you could just replace Sayamalu, and I'm like, why would you think that? He from week 9 through the rest of the season, I thought he was one of the best left guards in the NFL. Gave up no sacks. I think he gave up 4 quarterback hits, and I want to say 10 pressures for week 9 on. That's top left guard play. It's not like this guy is a slouch. He's coming off his best season as a pro, where he finally was fully entrenched as a left guard, played a full entire season there. Even like you said, he had Peters, Dillard, Big V, whatever he played with. He's still played extremely well, and he's developing just fine, especially for his contract. He's on one of the most budget long-term deals that the Eagles need from their starter to have. So, Sayamalu, I think, is a top 20 left guard. I would even say top 15, to be honest with you. I don't think, but the Eagles fans don't think of him that way. They think he's replaceable. He's very cheap.
They've got a really good deal. I think actually, because I'm trying to find my article just because I could see what I said. And if you go on my name and sort of look at Sayamalu, I wasn't always the biggest.
You posted that article when they extended him, correct? Because I think I remember that.
No, I reposted it then. I wrote about it, I think in 2016, but I republished it
when he was drafted
for BGN in 2017.
I loved him when he was drafted. I did think.
Yeah.
At the time, we all thought he was Kelsey's replacement. We all thought he was Kelsey's replacement.
Yeah, I did as well. I actually worried about him next to Kelsey, and I spoke in the article about how he is basically, I saw him as a centre, but this is basically what I said then, and I still think it stands. This is exactly in my conclusion. I said he's not a mauler type lineman, which is why he fell, but he's technically very good and a very, very smart player. He will never dominate his opponents, but he is very sound and will sustain blocks. I'm perfectly fine with him starting next year. Yes, he's slightly under blah, 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 and I talk a little bit about him. But I think that's why people like your sexy pick. I said in the conclusion here again, he may not be a flashy player and send his opponents flying to the ground, but there is a lot of value in simply sustaining your blocks like he does. And I said I think he could be a top 10, 12 player. I said basically he's never going to be a star. And this is the way I finished it, which I think, to be honest, I think I nailed it. I said he's smart, tough, and athletic enough, above average player. And I think the reason why people don't like him as much is because, like you said, he's not a sexy player. He doesn't go around knocking people off. He doesn't go around sort of just completely dominating. You see Lane Johnson have these reps where he just kills dudes. Jason Kelce has these reps where he moves like he's a running back. Brandon Brooks literally kills dudes in some block. Sam Ali just sort of sustains his blocks. He doesn't finish hard. You're not going to get him on Twitter, people tweeting saying, oh my God, look at that Sam Ali block. He's not like that as a player, but he just does his job. You very rarely see, we're losing this game because of Sayamalo. You have to think he had one really bad game last year. But except for that, he was very consistent. And because he's not flashy, I think people underrate him. But as I said in this article, and I'll say it again now, there is a lot of value in simply sustaining your block for a few seconds and have enough time for a running play to get past you, enough time to get the ball out. You might not be keeping a good defensive tackle down for 4 or 5 seconds, but he will do enough to help the Eagles. And I think that will continue this year. So, yeah, I'm higher on Sayamalo, definitely. I think he'll have a big year this year.
Bravo, well said. There's nothing else we could say. I'd say I'm all when
so
I
who's your 14?
My way. So my 14 is Andre Dillard. So right. The reason why I have Andre Dillard this high is obviously because Dillard is replacing a legend, Jason Peters, and that entails consistent top 7 left tackle play. Say what you will about Jason Peters. I know his injuries aren't consistent, but his play is. He has played along the lines of a top 7 left tackle in the NFL when he's on the field. Confidence issues have already arose after the Eagles wrongly moved in the right tackle to replace Lane unexpectedly due to his injury. The Eagles strongly need Dillard to play up to his first-round capabilities, especially protecting the blind side of Carson Wentz and his durability concerns. I think, especially in a year where I think you have to ask Carson Wentz to make more plays out of the pocket this season, you need your bookend tackles to play well. You can't have just Lane Johnson playing well and the left side completely collapsing. It's not going to work that way. And look at your own division. I mean, I don't want to say the Cowboys, because I thought if the Cowboys brought back Robert Quinn, I'd be a lot more afraid of their pass rush. But Washington's defensive line, you're playing twice a year, and they have the guys that could injure Carson Wentz. I know everybody hates when we talk about Carson Wentz and injuries and stuff like that, but his durability is a concern. I honestly think Carson Wentz's durability concerns are all on the same lines as Donovan McNabb's when he was the franchise quarterback. So the Eagles always found a way to put a left tackle in front of Donovan McNabb. I hope to pray that Andre Dillard can play up to his first-round capabilities, be the player that they thought he could be, because I thought last year there was no way he was making out the top 10. I thought the Bengals were going to take him at number 10. I locked him in there for my mock drafts time and time again. I was happy when he fell to the Eagles. I fully believed in him being the future left tackle. I just think the transition from Pac-12 to the NFL is the toughest college transition. They're not playing that much NFL talent. It's scarcity of NFL talent in the Pac-12. He did not handle bull rushes well. He was on his ass a lot, like you said. He can't play on the level he did last year and have the Eagles just run smoothly. It's not going to work that way. So that's why I think his impact makes it all the way for me at 14, because he needs to play like a starting caliber left tackle. And I know everybody's going to be like, well, they won with Big V, and he didn't really do that well. He gave like 9 sacks that season, but I get it. I don't think Andre Dillard even played to the Big V capability, though.
Big V when Big V was in, they chipped the defensive end pretty much every snap with a tight end.
And I think they have to still.
You don't want to do that too much, though. They're too talented at tight end to spend the first 2 seconds of every rep. Dillard's going to have to do a little bit by himself. It's like saying, oh, brilliant, leave Sanders into block. And you're like, but then you're leaving Sanders into block. So in that sense, I agree with you. What I'll say on Dillard is I have Dillard lower than you. And Dillard's a weird one because I loved him pre-draft. I really liked him. I thought it was a great first-round pick. And I've not got off him. The issue I have with Dillard is nothing about technique. And to be honest, people say it's strength. And his strength is a problem. His ball rush, he has to handle ball rushes better. You can go to a gym, you can get stronger. These guys can bulk up. My issue with him, actually, and I haven't watched enough of him to judge, is his competitiveness. And when people say that, you think, how dare you question someone's competitiveness? I'm not saying he's weak, but anyone who watches professional sport, the idea that everyone plays at the same intensity is rubbish. Some players have just a bit of a freakish mindset, almost like a warrior mindset. I mean, Jason Kelce, and this is my problem with JJ Arcega-Whiteside, by the way, the completely different. Oh, he came out and said, I'm injured. Then go and read about what Kelce played through last year. Like, these guys, some of them have a mindset where they're like different level of competitiveness. He looked a bit soft to me, Dillard. Did he really want to be out there getting battered around by 300-pound defensive linemen who are bigger and stronger than him? My question with Dillard, I just haven't seen it. And it's not like I'm negative about him. I just want to see it until I see it, until I can say, right, I'm happy with him. Technical-wise, athleticism-wise, he's got it. The feet are great. The feet are light. He gets to his sets well. All the sort of coaching cues, he's got it. Like, he's very polished for a rookie. The question is, how tough is he? And I don't mean that sitting here as sort of a tough guy in my bedroom recording a podcast. I'm not an NFL offensive tackle, so it's fine for me. That is his job. And that is the question where I want to see it, really. Is he going to be nasty? Like Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson, they are nasty dudes. I mean, like, they are physically demanding. I mean, Brandon Graham and the same on the opposite side of the field. There are some guys that just have that edge. Does he have that edge? And that's why, because I agree with you. I think in terms of importance this year, it's massive. Left tackle is a premium position. And let's be honest, Wentz has a sort of great innate feel of pass rush at times, but he does like to hold on to the ball. He will wait that extra second. And there's a very different, there's the sort of, in coaching circles, different coaches will view this very differently about, do you want a guy who stands in the pocket like Ben Roethlisberger and takes the hit and delivers a late throw, or do you want a player who gets rid of it quickly? And to be honest, there's a very fine line between that balance. But Wentz does hold it a little bit. And if Dillard keeps getting beat repetitively, this offense is going to struggle a little bit because they're going to get hit a lot. And the receivers aren't going to bow Wentz out because they're not going to be good enough this year. So I agree where you have him in terms of how important he is. I'm just slightly more concerned about the player, but I do have him on the list. So we still haven't got anyone yet that we completely disagree on. I do have him on my list, just not as high as 14.
I question him as a player as well, though, because I don't know if you remember that Derek Barnett and his scuffle at training camp where he was crying. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that seems like a long time ago.
It was, but it wasn't that long because he was a rookie. I mean, he was crying for that. As soon as they put him at right tackle and he was awful and they benched him in the second half versus the Seahawks, what did he do to the media right after? Kept crying about that. Yeah. Like I said in the other podcast before, as Mike Leach took that Mississippi State job, who's the first person that comes out and crucifies him for it? Andre Dillard. Like, I don't know what his attitude's like, but from what he showed me, it's piss poor. I put Andre Dillard at 14 because of the impact the left tackle position is. You could, like you just said, Carson Wentz will hold on to the ball and try to make something happen. Nick Foles, during that magical playoff run, the ball was always out like that. Big V couldn't mess up because he had the time. Like you said, he had the chip blocks and he had the time. They had Brent Selk then. Now you're asking Andre Dillard, who I don't even think is at this point, he's a better player than Big V for sure. But going into a pandemic, going into like a lost offseason where you're coming off I would say, a disappointing rookie season after being a first-round pick. Because there was some bright spots for sure, but there was some dark spots. And then there's some stuff that we're talking about that has nothing to do with football, but it has something to do with football.
It didn't that I'm trying to think back now. Wasn't that practice as well when Dillard got upset?
Yeah.
Wasn't it Barnett? Didn't Barnett, though, push him back into Wentz and didn't, Doug have to talk to... I'm sure my memory isn't as good. I'm convinced that
there's a picture.
Hit Wentz. Didn't he hit Wentz, though? Didn't Barnett push Dillard so far back? He actually hit Wentz.
I'm sure that's what the fight was about, but
Because if you look at... I know we're mid-recording. We try not to look up too much because then you have people are probably screaming down at us like, yes, it was. If that was the one that I think of where he hit Wentz, we know what Derek Barnett's ball rush is like. When Derek Barnett shoves you back into the quarterback You got to work on your anchor, buddy, because Derek Barnett don't push anyone back into the quarterback. And yes, he was a rookie that time, but it sort of highlights what we're talking about, that he has to get a bit more aggressive. Because Barnett, by the way, being aggressive doesn't mean you're a good football player. Derek Barnett is about aggressive as anyone, and he's not the best Eagles player. So you can be very aggressive and very tough. It doesn't mean you're sort of really good. But I wonder if that spark is there with Dillard.
No.
I think that's what we've got to see. That's what
I
we've got to see.
This because I really wanted to know. So Jonathan Cyprian, you remember him when he was on the team?
Ex-Jag safety, yeah.
Yeah, so he had to be held back from practice after Andre Dillard forcibly pushed him to the ground during what was supposed to be a light practice, and Barnett chased Dillard, and they mixed it up after they had faced off during a later play.
I don't mind that as much. Good. If you gave Cyprian a little bit of extra, that's fine. I don't mind that as much.
I forgot about that. But yeah, so fair to question Barnett's. I mean, it's fair to question Dillard, the player, the competitiveness, and all that stuff. I think you're completely dead on with that. But
right, let's go. 15.
So that was my 14. Yeah, so 15. What do you have for 15? Because I think you're going to be like, finally for mine.
Yeah, so of players that you've mentioned so far, I haven't got Roby Coleman here, although I think I would move him up, and I haven't got Dillard here. I have a rookie in my top 15. Despite telling people to be cautious, I do think Jalen Reagor is going to, whether we sort of should ask a lot of him this year, he could be wide receiver 1 if Deshaun Jackson goes down very quickly. I don't really buy this whole, he's only going to play Z, so don't worry about him. Yes, he's going to learn Z first because that's what you do with rookies. Then when he's learned Z, you teach him something else. I mean, Doug comes out in a press conference and says it, and everyone thinks we drafted the backup in the first round. What you do is you teach someone one position, then you teach them the next one. This is a virtual off-season. We're not going to go, right, here's the whole playbook, learn it at once. Everyone needs to calm down a little bit about that. He will still play if Deshaun Jackson doesn't get hurt.
I can't believe people are getting...
Oh my goodness! I know. There was literally tweets.
Deal about that.
There were tweets like the Eagles drafted the backup in the first round. No, he's just learning Z first.
He's the future Z of the team, guys. Like, come on. They drafted JJ Whiteside to be the backup X2, but where did he play? He played every position during the season. Like, guys, come on. What do you expect us to say at this point?
Exactly.
Hype him up? He's going to be our starting wide receiver and do everything that we need him to do during this pandemic. Like,
Reagor is not just going to back up Deshaun. Reagor is going to have a role. Even if Deshaun said they will both have at the same time. We spoke to Mike Kay about it a couple of weeks ago, about how they'll line up on the same side of the field. He's going to have... Now, we spoke yesterday about how much we still like Deshaun, and I still think Deshaun leads the team in targets, but you cannot ignore Deshaun's injury history. We said it yesterday as well. Sorry, not yesterday, when we last spoke. Deshaun has issues. We know this. If he goes down, Reagor is going to have a big role. Whether he's ready or not, it doesn't matter. He is going to get targets. And he is probably going to have to play a bigger role when you want a rookie receiver to play. There is an outside chance. I think it's Deshaun like you, but there is definitely a chance he leads the Eagles receivers in touches, targets as well as touches. He needs to basically provide a vertical threat if Deshaun goes down. He needs to not just do that. He needs to get yards after the catch. He probably needs to learn the slot as well. There's even an outside chance. I don't think this will happen. But if JJ comes in and just literally cannot play, he might have to play at X at times and he might have to get off press. So he's got a lot to do this year. For a rookie, he has too much to do. If you're being honest, we spoke already about cap room. If cap room wasn't an issue, I think they would have signed another receiver this year and still drafted Reagor. He is going to have to play a bigger role than you want a rookie to play. And I think he basically, even as a rookie, has to be somewhere on this list because I just think he's going to have to play a really important role this year. Normally, I wouldn't put rookies as high as top 15, especially not wide receivers where it's a slow transition. I wrote about why it's so hard for receivers. But yeah, who do you have at 15 then as well?
Reagor made my list, though. I will say. He made my list, but he's towards the end, but he made my list. But I have Jake Elliott.
Oh,
You're
no.
number 15. Jake Elliott had to make my top 15. Kickers can decide games. Simple as that. And Jake Elliott is probably this franchise's second best kicker behind David Akers. Say what you will about his chip shots misses from 30 yards. I can't answer those. I don't know why he misses those sometimes. It's completely mind-boggling to me. But again, those can decide games. So they need him to have some of that magic that he had in 2017 where he hits that 62-yarder against the Giants. I'd love to bring that up. They need Jake Elliott to be a consistent good catcher. I need him to have at least 33 made field goals this year. I need that from Jake Elliott at least. So to be a top powerhouse in the NFC, when you're talking about being a first seed in the NFC, you need everything to go right. When you go back to that Eagles season, no matter who the personnel was, everything was going right. The rushing offense was in the top 3. The passing offense was getting it done. Carson Wentz set a franchise record for most passing touchdowns in the season. The secondary with guys that you really didn't really hear of besides Malcolm Jenkins was getting it done. The pass rush with a rejuvenated Chris Long, Fletcher Cox, Tim Jernigan, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett was getting it done. Vinny Curry. The offensive line was getting it done. You need every little – and then not only that, they didn't even expect to even have Jake Elliott that year. It was supposed to be Caleb Sturgis. Jake Elliott came out of nowhere, and he got it done that year. So you need literally every facet of your game to be at its performing above expectations to be a number 1 seed in the NFC. And that's why I have Jake Elliott making my top 15 because kickers can decide games. And he's very important for that.
So this is the first big disagreement we have. He's actually not on my list. I had him at 20 before today.
I just won some beer.
I edited it. And yeah, I don't know. I reckon the people might agree with me. We'll see. Actually, I don't know. Maybe actually they'll agree with you. I'm nothing against Jake Elliott at all. Everything you said is right. I just don't have him on there. I did have him 20. And then
Do you not have him on there because you trust him though?
I like it. I have no problems about it at all. I am
worried about the 30-yard chip shots. I don't understand why he misses those.
Yeah, they're a bit weird, but as far as a player, I just don't have him here due to sort of where I rank them. He would be 21 for me. He was 20 and I bumped him down a position, so he would be 21. Yeah, I don't think we need to spend too long on a kicker, but fair enough. You went bold. You went him earlier. I mean, you're right. I mean, kickers can determine loads of games, so there's no point denying that. I just didn't have him there. Right, I'm going to jump ahead to 16, and I don't need to talk about this player because you've already had him. So at 16, I had Nickel Roby-Coleman, and we already spoke about him at length, so I'm not going to mention anything. Basically, everything you said, I just have him below Reagan and Barnett. Because of really the reasons that I've outlined already. But yeah, I have Roby Coleman still top 16. Who do you have at 16 then, seeing as we know it's not Roby Coleman?
All right, drum roll, please.
All
Dallas
right,
Goedert. I got Dallas Goedert.
I forgot you didn't have Dallas Goedert. He is far too low. He is way too low on your list.
See, yeah, I know. People are going to be upset about this. But I think the replacement thing played way too far into this because if Dallas Goedert gets injured, Zach Ertz and Josh Perkins still get it done for me.
I think there are people. Before you say that, there are people I think that think the Eagles are going to be a 1-1 personnel offense this year because they drafted so many wide receivers. No. I don't. I think there are people that think is Dallas Goedert going to get snaps? Because and I think those people are wrong.
Those people, that doesn't make sense though, dude. I mean, that makes no sense. They, like you said, they have one reliable wide receiver. Yeah. Alshon probably is not going to be available week 1. Probably going to start. I think the Eagles would hope he starts on the PUP. I don't think they're worried about getting him on the field at all. Deshaun Jackson is it. That knows your offense. There's no absolute reason why you take Dallas Goedert, your second best receiving option, because I don't. As much as we talked about Deshaun Jackson, his impact, and how much we think he's going to do great this year, it's not like he's definite to come back from this core muscle injury and be great. He could fail. So, on a consistent basis, going into the season where you can just say, I can rely on that guy, I can rely on that guy, you can always say for once it's receiving options, there's only 2 players you can say that about, and their names are Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. So you do not take Dallas Goedert off the field. You continue running 12 personnel. Here's why I have him as such an important thing, and because we keep harping on this wide receiver stuff. So obviously Goddard has become a reliable target for Wentz. I think he's starting to become Wentz's second read naturally. Given all the inconsistent play the Eagles have at the wide receiver, especially the exposition with Alshon's injury, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's poor rookie season, I don't think much of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside could say it all the time. But with that all in the mix, because who knows? That's just my opinion. Arcega-Whiteside could kill it or come back and be a good player for them that they hope he can be. But given right now, Goddard might have to rotate on the outside to play the X position when they want to exploit matchups. So that's incredibly important to me. When you don't have that Alshon Jeffrey out there to take on that jump ball corner, to take on that lanky corner on the outside, so that your slot wide receiver like Jalen Reagor and your Z wide receiver like Deshaun Jackson and your tight end like Ertz can eat up in the middle of the field or downfield, you need that guy that could have that one-on-one and win it for Wentz. It might be Goddard this year. They might move him more into the X. We might see that. But again, the 12 personnel is a huge part of the team's passing offense. So Goddard, you have to make this list. I think you can. I have him at 16, right? We're at 16, right?
Yeah, 16.
Yeah, so I have him here at 16, but
I had him at 10. So
his role, no matter what, is in the top 20. I know you have him super high, but no matter what, the role he brings is in the top 20. And going into next season, he's your only reliable second best option in the passing game on this team still.
Yeah,
so
I think
that's it.
The Eagles are not going to play loads of 1-1 personnel to get John Hightower and JJ on the field. So Goddard's on the bench. Whatever Doug's philosophical beliefs are, philosophy is one thing, and then scheme is another. And you pick your scheme around your players. So you might love 1-1 personnel. In an ideal world, you got 3 stud receivers. Well, guess what? We don't. So
I don't even think that's an issue. I don't even think that's an issue with Doug because Doug scrapped his whole entire mantra towards the end of the season and went towards the previous worked for the previous head coach and won a Super Bowl with it. So that doesn't bother me. I think he wants the best players to play. That's Doug's MO. And that's why Dallas got to be on the field. Whoever thinks that is wrong.
Yeah, I'd agree.
There's no way. Yeah. Even Goodwin. There's no way you tell all these guys, hey, you're learning our playbook and practicing with us through a screen. You're going to play a huge role in our offense next year, though.
Yeah,
not the guy that knows the whole entire offense, that performs on the offense, that's a reliable option for my quarterback, but you.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense. That makes no sense at all. So, Goddard has to be on your top 20 list no matter what. Anyone that makes this list, you have to put Goddard in it no matter what. You and I obviously disagree where his impact matters the most. I think you can make a case for either one. I think more people will probably agree with you because even I'm talking myself into it by saying he's the second best receiver on the team. But that's exactly why. And again, you hit it best on the previous episode anyway, so we don't have to go much more into that.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time. Right, I'm going to go 17 because I'm going to give you mine, and I think it might compute. It might surprise a few people. So at 17, I've gone for fan favorite. Not really. Linebacker Nate Gary. I have gone for Gary in my top 17, which I can see by your face. You're a bit surprised.
No, I'm not surprised because he made my list too.
Oh, he made your list.
I thought it was just going to be me. Dude, he's the best linebacker on the team, unfortunately.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I'm telling you, I actually watched. I was going to write a piece about him, and I was going to write a piece about TJ Edwards, and I essentially got bored because there's not enough film on TJ Edwards to write a piece about him. TJ Edwards has become like fan darling. He is a base linebacker who plays the run well. He's not playing in sub package. Unless I'm wrong, and if I'm completely wrong, I'll hold my hand up. To me, he's a base linebacker. He will play in run down and will be good. He's a good run defender. I think when you're playing Zeke and you're playing Barkley and you want someone who can tackle a running back, but he's not playing in nickel, which we're going to play 70% of the time most likely. He's definitely not playing dime. Gary's going to play all 3 downs. He's the only linebacker that will play all 3 downs, I imagine. So I think really, considering he's the only linebacker on the team that I'm certain will play all 3 downs, there's no way Davion Taylor is ever playing in base. He's a sub package. I'm not sure how to an extent, you can't. I feel like you have to have Gary on this list because as much as people want to say the Eagles devalue the linebacker position, we've spoken a lot about this, and this is such an important point. So apologies if you heard me make it before. Just because the Eagles don't value paying linebackers does not mean the linebacker position does not matter in this defense. It's like the idea that if you don't pay running backs, you think running backs don't matter. They're 2 completely separate arguments. The Eagles' point is that linebacker is not a premium position. It's also a position you can get cheap, so you don't need to pay them. Same goes for running back, which is why you don't pay them huge money. That doesn't mean the Eagles' linebackers can suck this year and they'll be good. If the Eagles linebackers are terrible this year, legitimately terrible, the Eagles defense will probably be bad because teams are smart and they will pick on you. They will run a lot of 1-1-1-2 personnel against the Eagles. They will get the Eagles in base. Then they will spread out those tight ends because there's loads of receiving tight ends, and they'll make you cover tight ends with your linebackers. And if the Eagles linebackers stink, they will struggle big time. So I think Gary actually has an important role because he's going to be the only 3-down linebacker. So I think there's a lot of people who won't put him in their top 20 because they think he sucks. I don't think he sucks. I think he's average, probably below average starter. I think actually his development is pretty good, and it's a credit to their coaching staff because he came from a safety to actually be a every down linebacker, we've seen high picks in the first round from guys who can't make that transition to sort of position this play as what we call them now. He is now a starting linebacker when he wasn't even a linebacker coming out. So Gary should get better because he's another year in the scheme. I'm cautiously optimistic he will be good enough to make their linebackers not terrible. And when I say good enough, if he is average or slightly below average, then I think he's still got an important role. So that's why I make the case for him being up there at 17.
So Nick Gary's not that good though. Like I need to make that clear because you don't think he's a good starter, right?
Yeah. No, I think he's average to below average.
No, he's a below average starter.
I think I
think you're hoping he can become an average starter.
Yeah, but this is where I think linebacker position can get confusing because I do think he gives you more than people realize because he can play 3 downs. And I think people now
covers a lot of
TJ
space.
Edwards. Yes, but
so
my point is
Gary
people now love guys like TJ Edwards, and I get it. TJ Edwards is great. He's a base linebacker.
He's a base linebacker for sure.
People love Davion Taylor, which Davion Taylor could potentially be very, very good, but only in sub package. It's actually quite hard to find 3-down linebackers these days. The Eagles maybe have one on their roster. And that position does matter because when you trot out your linebackers, you need them to do a multiple thing. You need them to do a range of different things because if they don't, teams will target you. Teams will pick on you. If you have bad players anywhere, you said it earlier on, we made a great point. Teams don't have that many great players. You have maybe 5 great players on your team. What good teams have is they don't have severe weaknesses because if you have a really obvious weakness, teams will target it big time. So I think although Gary is, I think I agree, he's not great. He's not even good. He's on a good day, he's average. He's probably a below average starter, but I do think you have to take into consideration the fact that he plays 3 downs. And I think that does hold some weight. And I think he's actually pretty good in nickel, and he could potentially be the dime linebacker as well this year, potentially. So he's going to play a lot of snaps. He's going to play a lot of snaps this year. So yeah, I'm not a big Gary fan, but I do think he's treated a little bit harshly by some Eagles fans online.
So I think, because to get on your TJ Edwards point, I think TJ Edwards in his specific role can be a more talented player than Nate Gary, but he can't do what Nate Gary can do because Nate Gary is where the linebacker position is going. Converted safety to linebacker that can cover a ton of field. Because like you just said it perfectly. It's very rare to find a 3-down linebacker in this era of football. You need a guy who can cover space. You need a guy who can cover field. You need a guy who can cover and the tight ends and the slot wide receivers and what have you. Because you look at I think the perfect comparison I have for Nick Gary coming out when I heard they were transitioning to linebacker, obviously it hasn't even come close to that type of player, but Shaq Thompson coming out of Washington when the Panthers drafted him and moved him to linebacker. I thought they were ahead of the curve, and that's exactly where the NFL is going linebacker. I think the Eagles are as well because, like you just said, they have Nate Gary, who's probably their best 3-down linebacker, their only 3-down linebacker, but they have to put all these different guys in on different packages where maybe you take Gary off the field and you put it's not going to be happening this year, but maybe in years in the future, Davion Taylor in for sub packages or base defense, you put TJ Edwards in. I just think my huge problem with Nate Gary is he's so bad in tackling. Such an inconsistent tackler. Takes horrible angles. Too many missed tackles. I think he had 16 missed tackles last year. That part of his game, if he can wrap up that part of his game, I would be a lot less harsh on Nate Gary than I am. Then he would be an average starter, for sure. I'd feel more confident about the linebacker position if his missed tackles were as bad as what they were. But they are. But he did take my list. He's actually...
One thing, because I completely agree with you. I do completely agree with you. His missed tackles are a big problem. But I will say, and this is the stats era we live in, there are some players who don't get close enough to the ball on a consistent basis to miss the tackle. And that's a weird thing. True. But sometimes what's the phrase? The grass is always greener on the other side, where you think so-and-so will be better because he's a better tackler. Well, yeah, but you've actually got to get to the ball to make the tackle. So I will credit Gary.
He covers a lot of space.
Yes, he
He
does.
absolutely does.
And sometimes covering space is important because even if you can't wrap up consistently, being there is enough to stop someone running into a zone. It's enough to make a running back change his course. It's enough to make the quarterback not throw the ball to
Some
the
of those
receiver.
times,
Speed matters. Speed matters.
So, yeah, but some of those times you're alluding to, he's behind the guy that's about to score.
Yes, and he has a massive issue with play action. He has a big problem with play action, and I'm trying to defend Nate Gary.
And that's the thing now.
Yeah. That Cowboys touchdown last year.
Nate Gary is, no matter what they do, they can bring back Nigel Bradham. It doesn't matter what they do at linebacker at this point. What they do in free agency, Jatavius Brown, what he does in camp, it doesn't matter. Nate Gary is your number one linebacker, and Jim Schwartz will not be told otherwise. So Nate Gary is playing a majority of your snaps, and I agree with you as well. TJ Edwards probably going to see next if they decide to move ahead with TJ Edwards as Mike. He's playing 30% of the snaps. 70% of the snaps is probably going to go to Nate Gary and probably Jatavius Brown.
I might be totally wrong about this, so here's a bit of a hot take for you. TJ Edwards goes down week 1. You play Sean Bradley, and you don't really suffer too much. I don't know if that's a bit of a hot take, but Sean Bradley can play.
I don't think that's a hot take because I don't think. I mean,
it's a baseline.
You're talking about a replacement level player with a replacement level player, though, because I don't think Sean Bradley's that good either. I think he's just a special team guy.
Yeah,
but
he is. Linebackers who
Davion
can play
Taylor,
the run.
I agree with you. Next season, your two main linebackers, which it's really tough to swallow because I don't even think they're going to bring Nigel Bradham back. I think if they wanted to.
Taylor?
No, it's not Davion Taylor. I think it's going to be Jatavius Brown and Nate Gary. Davion Taylor definitely redshirted.
Yeah, I was thinking the year after. Sorry, I was thinking the following.
Oh no, year after for sure. I think they would hope. I don't know if that's a guarantee, but they would hope.
I think
Davion Taylor makes that lead.
It is Alex Riley. Oh, who's the linebacker? They've got another linebacker. I've got his name wrong.
All right, so hold on though, really quick. Number 17 was Isaiah Myles for me, and you pretty much destroyed the whole entire conversation with him anyway. So all I'll say is 0 sacks and limited pressures allowed the last 7 games. If Myles continues that play, the Eagles' offensive line becomes even a more cohesive unit. And I'm with you. I bring back Peters. I minimize the blow that you took by instead of losing 2 main cogs along your offensive line, lose 1. Bring back Peters. Make Brooks' impact loss as minimal as you possibly can. Play Pryor. You have Myles who's trending upwards and playing well. You have a cohesive unit at that point. If you're trying to replace Jason Peters level play and Brandon Brooks level play at the same time, I don't know. I think you're asking too much of Sayamalu and Agent Kelsey, who has been thinking about retirement, and Lane Johnson, who has been known to be injured now lately. So
my first thought actually when I saw the Brandon Brooks news, my first thought genuinely was bring back Peters, and not as a guard. Bring back Peters to play.
Not as a guard. Yeah.
Then you've at least got another spot shored up. But anyway, right, let's move on. We've been going for an hour with too many debates.
I have Nate Gary next, though. Gary
next. You have Gary.
You pretty much killed the Nate Gary conversation. Like I said, I don't think Gary is a good player. I think it's a stretch to even call him an average player. But he fits what the Eagles want in an athletic and quicker linebackers. Their devalue of the position will hinder them in some capacity when facing counter runs and covering tight ends next year. Gary is the definition of a shorts guy, so he's in every position to be the team's top linebacker in 2020. They'll need him to make a leap in his development to become the player they view him as, but he'll be important in his role as top linebacker for the defensive success this season. So you have to make him, no matter who the number 1 linebacker is on this team, because if they brought back Bradham, I don't even think he's the number 1 linebacker. So no matter what, Nate Gary's number 1 linebacker. No matter what they do, no matter what anybody says, it's Nate Gary. That's who it is next year. So your number 1 linebacker has to make the top 20 list. Simple as that.
Yep. Also, I don't need to spend any longer on my 18 because my 18 is Andre Dillard. So we've sort of got similar. You had him, I think, at 14. I have him at 18. And again, for the exact same reasons. If they sign JP, obviously he goes out the list. But they haven't as of yet. So, yeah, I have Dillard at 18, which means we're pretty similar. I'm trying to think the only difference we've got so far heading into the last 2 is you've said Elliott and I've said Rager. So am I right in saying at 19 you have Jalen Rager?
Yeah, I do have Jalen Rager at 19. Wow. People are going to be pissed at us. This is not that much time for saying that. I believe
really
it's going to be.
Actually, how similar we are. We'll talk about it at the end. Let's wrap it up. And then, So Rager at 19.
I have Rager just because I think, just to add to what you said, because you pretty much said everything, the Eagles are going to need more than one playmaking wide receiver, though. It can't just be Deshaun Jackson, who is on the fringe of retirement. They need somebody else to step up. And again, Nelson Aguilar might have not been productive, but he played a huge timeshare of your snaps. So you look at this team, and like you said, you can only trust one wide receiver going into the season. They need another one to step up and replace the timeshare, the snaps that Nelson Aguilar had. It has to be Jalen Reagor. He's in the best position to be that guy. Already has history with the wide receivers coach and Aaron Moorhead, who, again, is coming straight from college, knows how to develop young kids. I think that's, again, helps the position that he's in. He comes to a city and a franchise that his father played for. I think that helps in development too. But again, I don't think it's going to happen until midseason where he really hits his stride. But he's already working out with Wentz in Houston. I think that will help. He's in the best position to contribute because the Eagles are going to have to force him on the field. They're going to, because they don't have. I don't think they have, besides Goodwin, who I don't think is a lock to make the roster, or I don't think is better wide receiver going into 2020, even then Jalen Reagor. They need somebody to step up. Either it's Goodwin or Reagor to Deshaun Jackson, because I don't think a lot of people are getting excited about Alshon Jeffrey right now, and I am not. I think at most he gives you. If he comes back from injury, I think at most he gives you 300 yards, 300, 400 yards. I think that's asking a lot. I think it's 300 max. But he drops the ball a lot. He's been one of the leading consistent in drop passes for the Eagles last couple of seasons. So I don't think Alshon Jeffrey will be the guy to step up. They need somebody outside of Deshaun Jackson. And it needs to be a playmaker, since your main possession guys are Goddard and Ertz. Reagor has to make my list here just because of those reasons. I don't think you can go into the season, and because I think if you're making this list and you're in your head, you're thinking you need that playmaking wide receiver to step up next to Jackson, you might replace Reagor with Goodwin. I personally wouldn't. I know you wouldn't as well. But regardless, that type of wide receiver impact needs to make this list, your top 20.
Yep. Right. So you have 19 Reagor. I have 15. 19 and 20. This is when, for me, actually, it got really difficult. Well, actually, the whole thing was difficult. I'm like you. I can't believe how similar we've been in some cases. But 19 and 20, I basically had 5 players for these 2 slots. 20 was the one that I really wasn't sure about, to be honest. But 19, I went for a backup, which I think, is he possibly the first backup on the list? I'm looking above. Maybe he could be the first backup on the list. I have Josh Sweat. So I have backup to Derek Barnett, and I have him basically because I don't think the Eagles are very good at defensive end. And this is assuming that Vinny Curry's not coming back. And if Vinny Curry's not coming back, Josh Sweat, is basically the only backup defensive end who might be good. I mean, they might be bad behind him. You've already mentioned this. I'm not going to go into huge detail. You mentioned it, but Barnett needs to play well because they haven't got much else. If Barnett just plays average again, Sweat's going to have to take a step forward because the Eagles rotate their ends a lot. Graham's getting on a bit, and Barnett is not really played a huge. He plays starter snaps, but he doesn't play every single role. They always rotate a lot. So Josh Sweat's going to get a serious amount of snaps. I mean, you imagine Barnett and Graham, the odds are one of them will get hurt at some point in the season. They're probably not going to both play 16 games because that will just be unlikely based on percentages. So Sweat's going to play. He will get a lot of snaps this year. I mean, a lot of snaps. I think he's going to play a lot this year as far as backups go. So I think he needs a big year. I'm cautiously optimistic he'll play well. I don't think he's as good as some people think. He's still got a lot of time. He's still got a lot of things to do to develop. But yeah, I have him at 19. Do you have him at 20, or did Josh Sweat not make your list?
He made it at 20. He
there
did.
You go.
Yeah, so
incredible.
Hold on,
Similar.
Just real quick. I gave Daniel Popper, who we said was the reason why we had this idea for anyways, a shout out for the tweet, and he liked it. So Chargers beat writer for The Athletic. He's the reason why we even did this episode, because that was a brilliant idea by him that we had to hit on. I'm glad that I gave him the proper credit, and we did give him a shout out in the first episode, so I just want to do it again real quick. But
perfect.
Joshua came for me at 20. I don't want to go that much into it because you pretty much dominated that. But like you said, look, if they bring back Vinny Curry, guess who's number 20 for me? Vinny Curry. Because the third edge rusher, whether it's Chris Long in 2017, Michael Bennett in 2018, or Vinny Curry in 2019, plays a massive role in this team's pass rush productivity. Just go back. Bennett had 9 sacks in 2018. Vinny Curry had 9 last year. He was one of the most productive pass rush. I think he had the most productive pass rush rate on the Eagles' defensive line in general last season. Chris Long was one of the most productive in pass rush rate in 2017 and even in 2018 as well. The Eagles are asking a lot of Josh Sweat to look, like you and I have said, we've been. I think you and I have been the most vocal for Josh Sweat is actually emerging and becoming a good player. But now they need him to. They needed him to be better than he's ever shown them before. They need him to be the reliable third guy at this point. So I don't know how you can make a top 20 list and not put the third defensive end on there for how much they matter for the Eagles, because it always seems to be percentage wise their most productive pass rusher is their third defensive end. So like I said, you have to replace the impact that Chris Long, Michael Bennett, and Vinny Curry played over the last 3 seasons. Right now, they're hoping Joshua could be that guy, and they need Joshua to be that guy, and that's why he made my top 20 for the impacts.
Yep, that's fair. And then at 20, so this is the only difference we have. Do you know what's incredible? This is actually mad. Basically, I changed this. I put this player on.
I swear to God,
for Jake
we
Elliott.
did not go over our list together. We never mentioned anything on our list together.
I literally put this player on the list at the last minute, and I did have Jake Elliott. And if I kept Jake Elliott on the list, we would have had exactly the same 20 players, which is genuinely mad. Now, I know we had them in different orders, but that is genuinely, that's hard to do. That's quite incredible. It shows that
maybe we literally, I don't even know if people are going to believe it at this point, but I swear on everything I love, him and I did not discuss who we were going to pick because we were
we did have them in different episodes. We did have some variables like Goddard and Reagan. But anyway, it's number 20. I had one that I'm not sure will be, some people won't have him anywhere near. I went Jalen Mills. And I went Jalen Mills because I think he's going to start at safety. I know they drafted, who did they draft? I've totally forgotten his name.
Kevon Wallace. But yeah, Mills is starting. Mills is starting. Don't even set up for a debate. Jim Schwartz is not benching Jalen Mills.
No, so I think Mills will get the first crack, and I think if he doesn't succeed, and I think he could get benched, and I think they could rotate players around who they're going to face. But I also think Mills takes on a big leadership role this year because I think Jenkins was a big character, and I think Mills is a big, big personality in that locker room. You saw him in his rookie year giving speeches before the game would begin and sort of huddling the whole defense around in his rookie year as a 6th or 7th round pick, whenever he was. So I think Mills has got an important leadership role to play this year. I think he'll start, and I basically think he's there because Jenkins is a hell of a player to replace. As far as losses go, Jenkins is the biggest loss on that team. And I think if Mills can do a decent job replacing him, it would be huge for the Eagles, huge for them, because Jenkins has been a massive player for them recently. So I had Jalen Mills there. Jake Elliott would have been my 21. And I said earlier on, just so people can hear, the players I wasn't sure about, the ones that I kept changing my mind on this pick, I had Maddox and I had Malik Jackson sort of just below. I had like a crowd here. Once I got past 18, I had Sweat, Mills, Maddox, Elliott, and Malik Jackson all sort of thereabouts. I went for Sweat and Mills. So there we go.
If I had to say my 3 honorable mentions would probably be Jalen Mills. I think I would put Jalen Mills in there because I think you're right. Yeah. If they're projecting him to replace Malcolm Jenkins' role, like I'm assuming they are, I think Jim Schwartz will give him every chance to. But I also think, like you've said on past episodes and brought it up, there might be matchups where they decide to say, hey, move Jalen outside because he does good against that wide receiver. Like he's fared well against I can't even think about anybody in the NFC East he's fared well against right now. But he's fared well against the bigger wide receivers. So go ahead and throw him out there against they go into Pittsburgh this year. So let's just use Chase Claypool as an example. Maybe they say, Jalen, go out there and guard him. I think that's a possibility as well. So that's important. And especially being a box safety and replacing Jenkins' role, that's also important. So Jalen Mills is an honorable mention. Nate Sudfeld was my honorable mention too, because Nate Sudfeld is the honorable mention, the person because he's the quarterback too. But if they were to go ahead and sign Josh McCown or get another quarterback too and dump Sudfeld to the side, that's the person I would also pick from an honorable mention because whoever's going to be that quarterback too, I think has to make this list. And unfortunately, it's because Carson Wentz has durability issues. I feel like when everything finally goes right for the Eagles, when they're finally in a position to make some noise, they always have that one injury that just derails it. And 2 times Carson Wentz has been that injury. So I know they need to – I know everyone wants to say Jalen Hurts, but like we said when we had Mike K in the episode, like you and I have repeatedly said, no way whatsoever Jalen Hurts sees the football field as the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2020. It will not happen. They will not put him in that position, especially given everything that's going on. Yeah, no way. So quarterback 2 is an important role for me. I had to throw that in there as an honorary mention. And then you just took my last guy, Malik Jackson. It would have been my next guy because the third defense, like I said, we're waiting for, we're hoping Josh Sweat's that third defensive end since they haven't really answered that question yet. If it's not, if he doesn't live up to those expectations and they don't address anybody, they need somebody else to step up. They need a pass rusher to step up along that defensive line. And your next up candidate that you would probably look out and say this could be the guy is probably Malik Jackson. So, yes, he's also an honorable mention.
Right, perfect. I think we'll leave it there after over an hour, a long episode. Wasn't expecting this this process to take so long. I think if we do the same next year, we could go 1 to 5 and then 6 to 10. I mean, we spent ages debating.
We could do this a 4-part episode next year.
Definitely.
But all right, guys, just to wrap this, well, I'll let you go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was going to say. So last thing, I'm really interested to see what other people say. So when this episode goes out, we'll obviously tweet our top 20. I'm really interested because maybe we're looking at it very similarly because even though we're not influenced, we didn't talk to each other. We do speak to each other a lot about football, obviously on the pod and outside of the pod. So maybe we've just been influenced too much. We've sort of
maybe, but I don't know. I'm confident in my list. I'm
making me think. The more I think about it, actually, that to be honest, it sort of sums up. But this Eagles roster is very, I won't say top heavy, but you can see very clear tiers. They've got their very, very elite players. You've got your sort of average, above average starters. And it's going to be really interesting when you look at that list because NFL roster is obviously big and we've only got 20 players there. And to be honest, I'm sort of stretching to find 20. I could quite easily have stopped the list after Sweat at 19 and then left off Myles. So I think it shows that some of these depth guys are going to have big years because I'm sure if we done like something like the new, sorry, just really quickly, if we done something like, and I'm obviously not a Saints fan, but if I was to look at Saints top 20, I reckon there might be some better players that don't make the list. I think the Eagles depth is good, but it's not outstanding. They're not the best roster in the NFC. So those players, some of them are going to have to step up. I mean, the fact I've got a rookie at 15, I've got Barnett at 14, I've got Gary at 17, like they're not studs. Like there's some average players there, and as you've said, not everyone is a stud on every team. Don't get me wrong. I think the Eagles roster is good, but I think some of these players, especially today in this episode, Gary, Dillard, Sweat, Roby Coleman, Rager, Barnett, they're going to have good years for the Eagles to do what they want to do next year. So yeah, I mean, I'll leave it there for me.
You could even throw Boston Scott on this list because I think his role is actually going to be a serviceable role.
I think people will.
Top 20.
I think people will too. I think you know what? I think that's actually a decent shout. I didn't think about him as much because I'm so high on Sanders, but I would not have any complaints if someone stuck Boston Scott on the end either.
Neither would I. That's why I said that because I think if that's probably the main difference that people probably would have is Boston's because I can't see that many differences when you think of maybe Malik Jackson and Boston Scott would probably be it. But Jonny, let's end it. You need to give your recap of your 11-20. I need to give my recap. Again, we're doing a giveaway for this one. Respond like we did with the last one. Respond to us, either Johnny's at, my at, or Eagles Brawl at. Who you think had the best 11-20? Why you think they had the best 11-20? And we'll pick the best answer and you win an Eagles jersey. So, Jonny, take it away. Give a recap of your 11-20 real quick.
Yeah, and what we should always do is before this episode's out, we'll tweet out the 1 to 10 and put a poll up on Eagles Brawl, get people to vote, and we'll do the same for 11 to 20. Then maybe we'll do the overall thing as well. Why not? It's the off season. What else are people doing? So I had Javon Hargrave at 11, Roby Coleman at 12, Derek Barnett 13. Oh no, I didn't. Wait, no, I'm lost. I think I'm reading yours. I typed yours out on my screen so I can remember, and I'm saying I didn't have Roby Coleman at 12. All right, so let's ignore everything I just said, and I'll actually read out mine now. I had Hargrave at 11, McLeod at 12, Sayamalu at 13, Barnett at 14, Jalen Rager at 15, Roby Coleman at 16, Nate Gary at 17, Andre Dillard 18, Josh Sweat 19, and Jalen Myles, the Green Goblin himself, at 20.
All right, 11, I had Javon Hargrave as well. Number 12, I had Nicole Roby Coleman. 13, I had Derek Barnett. 14, I had Andre Dillard. 15, I had Jake Elliott. 16, I had Dallas Goedert. 17, I had Isaac Sayamalu. 18, Nate Gary. 19, Jalen Rager. And 20, Josh Sweat. So, like we said, the poll's a good idea. We'll talk about that. Because I think the poll needs to be done. Because, again, I need my Riding the Cloud IPAs from you.
We'll see. See, I reckon Jake Elliott might swing it. I reckon it'll be Jake Elliott might be the one decider. I
Jake the
think
Snake IPA. All right. I like
he
it.
might win it. He might win it for you. We'll see.
All right. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in to Eagles Brawl of the Brawl Network. Again, we would appreciate 5-star ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts. You can ask us questions on there or Twitter that we may answer on the show. Again, we did our list 1 through 10 on Monday, this past Monday. Now we're releasing 11 through 20. We'll announce the winners of the jerseys as well. Hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for tuning in.